Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, in Washington. Weitzman also discusses the release of hostages, the West Bank question, and the possibility of an autonomous Palestinian state. Now, let me begin this conversation, ma'am, by asking you, will the announcement bring lasting peace to West Asia?
Thank you. It's very good to be here. I think your question is a very important question, and I think it shouldn't be directed at me. I think that Israel has shown from the beginning that it wants peace, and when I talk about from the beginning, I'm talking about since 1948, since the establishment of Israel. Israel was trying from the beginning to live a quiet life, and on October 7th, 2023, was brutally invaded by Hamas, by a terrorist organization that was completely inhumane in the way it acted, and has been acting so, still holding about 20 live hostages and about 30 hostages who are not alive anymore. And this is something that Israel has been trying to end repeatedly. Israel has been trying to return the hostages and to maintain a situation where it's not threatened anymore. This is what Israel is striving for and is still striving for. And I think this agreement is something that's very close to addressing these needs and realizing these needs. And I hope very much that Hamas will accept this proposal and will actually be able to lead to long-lasting peace.
How do you describe this 20-point peace program? I mean to say, I think this is the biggest probably after the Oslo Accords in terms of a comprehensive arrangement.
So I think the most important thing to understand is the fact that it addresses, like I said before, it addresses Israel's needs for security. And it realizes, we can talk about the points, and I don't think we have time to do so, but I think there are experts and analysis is talking in depth about each of the points and exactly what each point means. But I think the most important things to understand is that it talks about Israel's right to get the hostages back. It talks about the disarmament of Hamas and the ability of Israel to be safe and to feel safe in its land, and that's what's important. It also has concessions to Hamas, basically freeing some of the terrorists who are being held in Israeli prisons today and other things. But for Israel, what has always been most important and remains being most important is returning the hostages and maintaining the safety of Israel, long-lasting safety of Israel.
Madam, with so many terror outfits operating, what is the guarantee that the old will not fuse into the new one? Something which India has seen in Kashmir, because this peace plan also is very clear about Hamas, that they have to leave Gaza. The terrorist infrastructure needs to be dismantled, but Indian experience has shown that the terrorists very rarely do so. They metamorphose into a new word or a new organization, and they continue to do the same thing.
So I think that's one of the main concerns that we've had all along, and I think that's something that the international community is very important. It's very important for the international community to be involved and to make sure that it allows Israel, if Israel sees that things aren't staying peaceful, if Palestinians are not committed to peace, and we see again a threat to try and conquer and try and invade Israel, to try and hurt Israelis, that's something that the international community should always be aware of and always keep its eye open and allow Israel to react when it happens. But I think there's also a more important issue that has to be addressed in this sense. I think it has to start with education within the Palestinian community. And that's another place where international community can put its pressure. Today, I think children in Palestinian territories in Gaza and in other places are being educated from a very young age to hate Israel, to hurt Israelis, and this is something that we can't accept. We see that we see a pay-for-slay regime even within the Palestinian Authority, where terrorists are being paid after they commit terrorist acts. So this is something that, of course, encourages terrorism, and the education encourages terrorism. So that's something that has to stop in order for the peace to be long-lasting and for not just to have history repeat itself, as you suggested. And that's something that, of course, the Palestinians should have it should be accountable for, but the international community must insist and put pressure if it really wants to see long-lasting peace in the Middle East.
I think you said something very important, indoctrination, but indoctrination in context of people living in Gaza and West Bank, but there's also, madam, larger indoctrination, which is about that Israel is not just, they have not done the right thing. How do you fight them? Because indoctrination is also like a narrative war to create an image of Israel which suits your political interest domestically.
Yeah, I think that's something that Israel is facing throughout the whole last 2 years. I think that understanding the history of Israel and the history of the conflict that's been going on for years now is something that's complicated. To really understand it, you have to sit, you have to learn, you have to be open-minded. And that's something that many people aren't willing to do. They're not willing to, a lot of people just want a one-liner. We see, a TikTok generation, they want to learn everything they know from a 15-second TikTok video or from a post on Twitter, and they don't want to actually really sit and study history in depth and understand it. Also, and also, they're not always open-minded. People make up their mind very, very fast. And don't really, and for some reason, don't want to listen to the other side. This is not only true for the conflict in the Middle East. It's true for many things. And I think having people realize this and having the whole society be a lot more open-minded, willing to listen to the other side, even if they don't agree in the end, but willing to understand and accept that there is another side. That's something that has to be done for the world, for the world as a whole to become a better place right now, and especially for the Middle East.
But weren't you surprised that universities are supposed to be places where you open your mind to the world, but the American universities were the one which were completely dominated by the pro-Palestinian protests 6 months ago. They became non-functional. Was that surprising?
So I think it's not true that it completely dominated. I think what we're seeing is that one side is very loud, very violent, and and tries to use tactics to shut the other side up, not to let anybody speak about the other things that they disagree with them. They present themselves as being democratic. They present themselves as being liberal, but really, in reality, they won't let any idea that doesn't fit exactly the way they think be heard. So they act violently, and they do very loud and very violent protests sometimes. But it doesn't mean that this is a majority. They want to look like a majority, and they're very intimidating, they're bullying, but they're not necessarily a majority.
Very well said. There is a very old saying, madam, that if popular opinion is illiberal, then liberal opinion can be undemocratic. My next question to you, madam, is, do you think that Hamas is going to accept it, a terrorist organization, accepting to dismantle itself and walk away?
I don't know. This is something that we're going to have to see. I very much hope so. I very, very much hope and pray that these people, these awful terrorists, will for once think of their people, think of the Palestinian people who are suffering, and do the right thing, not only for Israel, but for the Palestinians who are suffering terribly under their regime for the past 2 years, of course, but also since 2005, where they violently took over the Gaza Strip after democratically being elected, and then changing their whole perception and really using the people and using the funds that entered into Gaza in order only to expose hate and to try and destroy things rather than build the Palestinian people and help the Palestinian people. So I pray, not only for myself, my family, my country, but also for the Palestinian people, that Hamas will do the right thing and finally accept a peace plan, put down their arms, and to have a better life for everybody.
Madam, the 20-point peace plan also has a space for the Palestinian Authority, but that itself is discredited. And you just spoke about the way children are being indoctrinated, were being indoctrinated in Gaza to hate Israel from their early age. How will you create a sort of a parallel or a new Palestinian leadership which understands the world in a newer way, understands the new reality, a new political configuration? How will you do that? Because they themselves are discredited, the leaders of the Palestinian Authority.
So I think this is something that's going to have to take shape, and we're talking right now about a plan. The plan is going to have to be implemented at some point, and further details are going to have to be looked at and implemented and created. So I think everybody realizes that a government or a leader of a country or people can't be a leader that wants to destroy another country, that doesn't recognize the right to exist, that doesn't put its own people first and its own and the benefits of its own people before the hate to other places and the will for destruction for other places. So I don't know exactly how it's going to look and how it's going to be created, but I think that there's an understanding that there's going to have to be some kind of mechanism built with leaders that will accept Israel's right to exist and who will want to live peacefully and to govern in a peaceful way to better the lives of Palestinian people.
Madam, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has been saying continuously for last so many decades, in fact, I would say from 2001 itself, that, the terrorism cannot be dealt on a piecemeal basis. There are states which export terrorism. Iran does it. Afghanistan does it, Pakistan does it, Syria did it, Lebanon did it by nurturing Hezbollah, institutionalizing it, Yemen does it, Saudi Arabia, Riyadh did it, How do you fight this indoctrination, Islamic terrorism? Because it cannot be separated from most of these countries where terrorists have safe haven, either in form of negotiators or in form of soft peddlers of ideas, not as hard terrorists, but as intellectuals who promote violent ideology. Well, you can't say that one cannot exist and another will have the space to exist. So my question to you is what's the long-term solution to this Islamic terrorism in West Asia?
So I think that's a bigger question than asking the Israeli consul in India. I think it's a worldwide question that has to be addressed, and I think acknowledging it. First of all, acknowledging in the Western world that there is a problem, of ideology, that some ideologies that exist today are could be destructive to the world. This is something that has to be acknowledged in order to be addressed. And that will be the first step. So I think that Prime Minister Modi was one of the first to understand this, and he's still an advocate for this, and he understands this well. But not everybody does. And I think, and there's kind of, will for turning a blind eye to this and trying to hope that the problem will just disappear. And I think that's why, if you asked me before about why Israel was facing this, because I think that Israel was being blamed for this, and they were hoping that if only Israel changed its way, then this whole Islamic problem would disappear, which is of course not true, has nothing to do with it. It's not that if the problem now with Israel and Hamas will be solved, that the whole Islamic, extreme Islamic ideology will disappear. That is simply not true. And I think that's something that until the Western world doesn't acknowledge, it's going to be very, very hard to address. And again, I think that's something that the world that wants peace, the countries that want peace, the people that want peace, have to work together to fight to make sure that the world is a place we all want to live in.
The criticism also, madam, has come because of the collateral has been high. More than 66,000 people have died in Gaza. And even your friends say that, well, this could have been avoided. This shouldn't have happened.
I agree. I think that it was terrible. First of all, the numbers are always skewed because we rely on Hamas, what Hamas tells us, and I don't believe anything Hamas says. So I don't know what the real numbers are, but of course, there were a lot of people who died. But as I explained before, these poor people were being used as human shields by a group of terrorist organization who never saw the people that it claims to protect. They never saw them as something that they need to protect or something that they need to fight for. All they wanted to do was destroy Israel. And whatever collateral damage that they had in that sense, then they did it. And if they had to hide in hospitals, they hid in hospitals. And if they had to hide in schools and shoot rockets from schools, then they did that, knowing that Israel would have to react because Israel has to protect its own citizens. And this is something that they just did. And actually, I want to say cynically, they even benefited from it. Because every innocent person who was killed because he was used by Hamas, the world decided to blame Israel for. So that's something that I hope will end soon, and I hope very much that the world realizes. Again, that's something I think the world just chooses to turn a blind eye to. It's a concept that's foreign to people who are peace loving, people who want the good of other people, which, as I think most of us have a hard time believing that actual people could behave this way. And I think that's why they couldn't understand Israel's point of view. They couldn't accept it because it's so hard to believe that it's true. But only once they believe it's true, and they can avoid this happening in their own countries in the future as well. I think they have to do that. And I think that it's terrible that what Palestinian people were suffering. And I think that the Hamas did terrible things to them. And I really hope that they have a chance to live peacefully soon too.
Okay, let me take you to a subject which is connected with the Gaza and the larger effort to bring peace in the region. Madam, there is an issue of settlement in the West Bank. First of all, can Gaza and West Bank be treated separately? And can the settlement issue in the West Bank complicate the peace plan initiative of the government of the day in Israel?
So I think that's a complicated question right now, and I think it's, we have to look at it longer, see it in a few months or in a few years. But I think if the key is that there has to be real will for finding a solution on both sides. Okay, once that really exists, then a solution will be found. Okay, but the will has to be there, and that's where the key lies. Once there's real will for finding a solution, I'm sure it might be hard. People might have to make concessions on some sides, but right now, until now, since 1948, we haven't seen real will on the Palestinian part to find some kind of solution. Once there is a real, genuine will, I'm sure that things can be worked out.
Madam, is Israel confident of rescuing remaining hostages in Gaza in case the Hamas refuses to cooperate, come to table on this deal?
Israel will not give up the hostages ever. If they don't come out in a peaceful deal, Israel will do what it has to do to get the hostages out and to make sure that it's safe again. So this is something I don't think, if there were now 50 Indians somewhere in a tunnel somewhere, that India would give up on getting its citizens back. And I don't think any Indian would want the government to give up on that. And that's the way all of us Israelis feel. The government, we will never ever give up on bringing back our hostages in any means that we can. We wish for peaceful ways. We've wanted to do negotiations. Really, and you can see this deal right now that the Prime Minister Netanyahu is supporting. Then it's exactly that. It's trying to bring the hostages home, and I think President Trump, who's been a true close friend to Israel, understood this and realizes the importance of bringing these hostages back. But even Trump himself said that if Hamas doesn't agree to these points, then he'll support Israel in whatever it needs to do to get the hostages back home.
Is Israel confident of global support? Its own friends have become critical of Gaza operations, and countries which were ideologically very supportive of Israel in the last 2, 3 or 4 decades, they came out and announced and declared that accepted Palestine as a separate state. A lot of Scandinavian countries, West European countries, they have all declared that. How do you look at it?
I think it's unfortunate. Like I said before, I think I mentioned it. I think that they're very, very naive. And I think they don't understand the reality of the Middle East. And I think that if their citizens were hostages somewhere, they would react differently. And I think it's a little bit condescending on their part to demand something from Israel that they wouldn't demand them themselves if they had hostages, if their citizens were being held hostages somewhere. So I hope very much that they'll understand this, and I hope very much that they'll understand that the problem is not Israel, the problem is Hamas, and the putting pressure on Hamas to come to this deal is the key to solving this. And maybe if Hamas doesn't accept this deal, they'll finally understand where the problem really lies.
Can there be a separate state of Palestine? A lot of people would like to know. Can there be a separate state of Palestine alongside with Israel?
First of all, I think we have to see a situation where there's a will to accept Israel's right to exist. And I said that before. That's the key to solving this problem. Once that happens, then we can talk about how it's going to look. But from our experience until now, from 1948 until now, this hasn't happened. Once that happens, we'll talk again and see how exactly this is going to look. But first, they have to accept Israel's right to exist and Israel's right to exist safely and soundly. And after that, things can be discussed again.
And before I close this interview, do you think this entire issue will have a political solution, or will ultimately end up through military means?
Well, that's a difficult question, and I don't know. All I have to rely on is hope. And I hope, and I see a really good plan here. And I see people leaders from all around the world, Trump and Netanyahu, but of course, and people from all around the world, including Prime Minister Modi and others from Arab and Muslim countries also supporting this deal. I hope very, very much that this is the key to the solution. I hope very much that Hamas will respond in a good way, and that we'll finally see this over.
Thank you, madam. Thank you so much for having a frank conversation on this peace plan with me. And this is all I had on point tonight. I'll see you tomorrow at the same time. Thank you, and good night.
This is India's #1 news network, and you're watching News9, English news as it should be.
TV9 फेस्टिवल ऑफ इंडिया 2025 से दिल्ली में मचेगा धमाका। तो दिल्ली वालों तैयार हो जाओ, इस नवरात्रि 28 सितंबर से 2 अक्टूबर तक इंडिया गेट के पास मेजर ध्यानचंद राष्ट्रीय स्टेडियम में TV9 फेस्टिवल ऑफ इंडिया 2025 ला रहा है मस्ती, मजा और ढेर सारा धमाल, जहां डांडिया